Welcome back to our show. I'm excited about this show today, especially our pop quiz. We're going to get there later. But joining us first is Mallory Newell, pollster and director of research at Ipsos Public Affairs. She's sitting next to Dan Cox. He's a research fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. As we discussed yesterday, President Trump's decision to declare a national emergency has become a hotly debated, controversial move. Our poll found that most Americans think there's no national emergency at the border, and by a 60-40 split, Americans oppose the president's decision. Now, national emergencies in general, they aren't uncommon. According to the Brennan Center for Justice, presidents have declared national emergencies 60 times since the power was codified in 1976. That includes Donald Trump. For example, Jimmy Carter declared a national emergency to limit business dealings with Iran. George W. Bush invoked an emergency declaration after the 9/11 attacks. And Barack Obama issued one during the swine flu epidemic. All national emergencies. But most of these were non-controversial. But critics say Mr. Trump's declaration is different in that the president is using his power to fund a border wall far bigger and more expensive than Congress was willing to pay for. And what's more, a coalition of 16 states is challenging the president in court. All right, so that's the background. Here's the question we wanted an answer to. Our exclusive daily poll from the Hill and Harris X asked, was the president's declaration an appropriate use of emergency powers, and will it be upheld by the courts? Let's see what we found. We found that about 6 in 10, 59%, believe this was an inappropriate use of emergency powers and it will be struck down by the courts. 41% believe it will be upheld. Now, we asked another question as well. Do Americans think Congress should have approved the original $5.7 billion for border security relief and avoided a continued fight on the subject, or is the $1.3 billion that Congress approved an adequate amount for border security? By almost identical numbers as those who don't believe there's a national emergency and who think it was an inappropriate use of emergency powers, 58% of Americans believe the $1.3 billion is enough, while 42% think Congress should have approved the $5.7 billion amount and avoided more border security fights. Mallory, are we spending enough money on border security? Is the president right to declare a national emergency? What is going on here? You got to unpack it for us.
Sure.
It's up to you.
Sure. All just right. Up to the two of us.
Exactly. No, just you.
Well, just me. Okay.
No.
Well, I think, honestly, when you look at this poll, it might as well have been asking, do you support or oppose the border wall?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's fundamentally what it comes down to. And I think the reason that we're seeing a lot of these similar numbers is because what this is really reflecting is exactly that. Do you support President Trump's border wall? Some Ipsos Reuters polling that we did earlier this year, back in January, again, found the same number. I think 41% support the border wall. So really what it comes down to is President Trump's base on this, that core group of 40% of Americans, most of whom, of course, are Republicans, are, in favor of an emergency declaration, are in favor of the $5.7 billion because they fundamentally believe a border wall is the right thing to do.
All right, Dan, so we are going to have you weigh in on this too. Do you think that the president's right to declare this national emergency, and will it get upheld in the courts?
I mean, I think it's a personal emergency for him, right? He promised this during the campaign. He's been really adamant about that. The Mexican government was going to pay for the wall, and now that fell through. And now he's a little bit left holding the bag on it, and I think he's trying to find a way out.
So in this court question, legal scholars disagree on this, but it feels like the preponderance of the opinion is headed in the direction that this is a dubious emergency at best. Am I wrong here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the legal scholar, but I think from a political perspective,
Yeah.
it's dicey terrain for him. And one of the things the problems that he's having is he's been talking about what an emergency it is, the whole issue of immigration, that a lot of his base agrees with him now that it is an emergency, but the rest of the public does not.
Okay, so here's the other question is, what happens if it goes to the court, as he says, it goes to the Ninth Circuit, and then I'm gonna lose, and then it'll go here, and then it'll be worse, and then we'll go back, and then we might do better. Supreme Court, the president had a whole litany. What happens if he loses? Does he pay a political price, Mallory?
It's hard to say, but if we know one thing about our president, it's that even, looking back at the midterms, for example, even when you can perceive some losses for him or for his party, he's still going to take credit where he can.
It's true.
And I think for this, the way that he's sort of outlining this process, we'll lose and then we'll go back, is just a way to keep telling his base, really, that he's trying to stick to those campaign promises, as you said.
Now, Dan, there's another side to this, which may be for his base and the people who follow the president. Do you think a court fight could actually be a venue for him to build support for his policy and to get more people coming to his side on the importance of a wall?
Well, I think his base is already there. There was a really interesting Pew finding, I think not too long ago, that asked perceptions of whether immigrants living in the U.S. are here legally or illegally. Nearly half Republicans think all immigrants living here are here illegally, right? And again, that comes from the rhetoric that he and others in his administration have been trafficking in. So I think to the extent that he's not able to fulfill these really important campaign promises on this emergency that he set up, that's going to be a problem for him.
And what do y'all think about the 21 Savage conundrum?
I had no idea he was English or British. I don't think anybody did.
No, I don't think people did. And I wonder if this question of, 'cause he's sort of a dreamer. When you think about it, he got brought here as a minor, and he overstayed his visa. I wonder if this will get more people who weren't paying attention to immigration to find out that 21 Savage, by the way, anybody who's not paying attention, 21 Savage is a big hip hop star. He got picked up for an immigration violation and was held in custody for a while. Turns out he was British, not from Atlanta. So now people are trying to figure out whether or not, I'm wondering if this will get more young people to pay attention to the immigration question that may not have been paying very close attention, and they're learning more about it now, what impact that might have as we go into a presidential year. Are you seeing young people paying attention to this immigration question? Is there room for growth here, or have we sort of permeated everybody's imagination on this question already? What do you guys think?
I tend to think that this issue is so polarizing, and people are so dug in based on their own partisan or tribal affiliations. And we know that most young people do tend to be left-leaning or identify as Democrats. So it's hard for me to sort of see young people, hip hop fans, kind of getting on board with where the president's at.
Yeah. I think he's going to have a tough time making a case there. So we'll see how this shakes out. Still ahead, we take a look at money and politics. That's next on What America's Thinking.